What's up, you guys? Chase the Dark Sage here, back with another video, and in today's video we will be talking about Bleach, the 1,000-year Blood War arc, one of the most anticipated arcs in anime history. Since Bleach is part of the big three and it never really finished in anime format, it's now coming back in the year of 2022, and by the time this video is out, obviously the anime version is not out, but you can come back to this video after the anime version comes out and you can see what my thoughts are on the manga version, and you can see maybe if there's a few differences in the actual anime version compared to the manga version. Now, this will be a spoiler-free review. There will be a few spoilers at the end, but I will be timestamping the spoilers and I'll be warning you guys audibly before the spoilers hit. But this will mostly be a spoiler-free review. So if you like Bleach and if you want to hear this review and you like more reviews like this, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, post notification bell, and like the video and share the content. And go ahead, follow me on all my other social media platforms. All my links will be in the description down below. So let's go ahead and talk about it. But before we go into my pros and cons, let's talk about the plot. Now, the plot has to do with Yawich, the main antagonist of this arc, and please do not kill me in the comments for saying his name. I do not know how to say his name, but Yawich, I don't know. Yawich wants to take back what he believes he is owed by taking out the Soul Society, creating a new world by destroying the Soul Society, the living world, and Hueco Mundo. Yawich is a bad man. Amongst these events, a major character dies, another returns, some characters take up more responsibilities, and Ichigo finally learns the truth about his past. This arc right here is basically a war between the Soul Reapers and the Quincy's. This arc was basically foreshadowed at the beginning by Iryu being a Quincy and telling Ichigo that he should not be friends with a Soul Reaper, and I thought to myself, will this ever come to fruition later on in the series? And it did. And you know, I'll talk about it in my cons. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the characters. Now, Ichigo in this arc for me is probably the best that Ichigo's ever been. I just love the character. I just love his aura. I just love his enthusiasm when it comes to getting stronger, when it comes to him taking up more responsibility, and just him being a person. Right now, Ichigo is getting into this character where he's taking up all the responsibility of having to save the Soul Society, and man, it's really weighing on him. And there's just so many more things that he has to learn in this arc as well about his past that obviously really wasn't touched on in past arcs, but now it's getting fleshed out a bit more in this arc. And I will say that I kind of like it, but then I kind of don't because of where it leads to. But we'll talk about that later on. We also have Yawich, the king of the Quincy's. Also being revealed as a Soul King's son, Yawich has had a very hands-on experience with Ichigo's past and upbringing. I won't talk much about him because more is revealed later on at the end of the first act, in the second act, and obviously a bit in the third act. There's nothing really happening with him in the third act, character-wise, except for, you know, obviously him being the main bad guy, him getting more powerful. The usual Shonen Jump stuff. And now we have this new group of antagonists built by Yawich called the Stern Ridders. And this is basically a little militia slash army of Quincy's, and they each have a different ability coinciding with the letter that is followed by in their name. And I will say that I kind of did like that power, but it became a bit gimmicky to me later on. Like I said, I'll touch on that a bit more later on. We also have the Soul Society captains, and honestly, I will say I liked them a bit more in this arc than I did the Rank arc. In that Rank arc, I felt like they was force-feeding me to really care about these characters, but in this arc, I kind of already got what they were in the Rank arc, but now in this arc, I really feel like I really do like these characters, and I love these characters, some of the backstory that they have, some of the interactions that they have with the enemies, and with other captains as well. And I gotta say that I really did like the captains in this arc. I did not expect to like the captains at all, because at first it was an antagonist force in the Soul Society arc, then the Rank arc, we had the Rankars versus the Soul Society captains, and I didn't really like that part of the arc. But now we have this arc where they're really coming into their shoes, and I'm like, okay, the captain's stepping up, and I like that. So I will say I did like all the captains in this arc. I'm not going to say specific ones because I don't want to spoil it, but I will say that some definitely outshine the others. And I still don't like that Fox dude. I really just don't. And then we have some of the supporting characters like Orihime and Chad, who, you know, do the usual stuff. But we got Kisuke and Yoriichi, so that's always great to have them in the arc. And oh, Yoriichi, some of the panels in this arc. Kubo knew what he was doing. Kubo knew what he was doing. Yoriichi is just such a bad woman in anime. And there are a few characters that return in this arc from past arcs that I will not be touching on because I do not want to spoil it or give you guys any expectations for this arc. So you gotta go ahead and read it or watch it whenever it does come out. But I will say that some surprises were expected, some weren't. Sadly, I got spoiled on the one that wasn't expected, so I enjoyed it. but I didn't really like the utilization of some of the characters. But we'll talk about that later on. Now we gotta go into my pros and cons. Let's go ahead and start off with the pros, because you guys said in my last video that it seems like I hate Bleach. And I don't think I hate Bleach. I know I don't hate Bleach. I just was very critical about it, about their rank arc. Their rank arc took up a lot of the reading that I did for the last video, which was 1/3 of the actual whole series of Bleach. I gotta reiterate that to you guys. Their rank arc, it just felt so long, and you got the Soul Society arc, then the rank arc. Yeah, I'm gonna criticize half of Bleach because I didn't like half of Bleach, but I did like the Soul Society arc. I did enjoy Bleach overall. I think that the writing in the rank arc is pretty good. So I don't know, people thought I hated Bleach. I don't know why you think I hate Bleach. I even said at the end of the video that I enjoy Bleach, but I couldn't recommend it all the way back then because of the rank arc. That's where I fell off. And I see a lot of people in the comments too, that's where they were kind of falling off too. So yeah. Now let's talk about the pros in this arc. And I gotta say the one pro that I really did like was that it was well paced. I gotta say that this arc, it went by. It wasn't holding onto anything too long, and I gotta say I really did like that. But that came at the downside of me not feeling a lot of emotional weight in certain scenes. But this arc was going really fast, and there really wasn't that many boring parts in this arc. In fact, whenever I was reading it, I wanted to read more. Unlike the rank arc, where I just wanted to read a volume, and I just wanted to put it down for the rest of that month. This arc also made me feel a bit more connected with the captains, because the past arc, like I said, I didn't really like them, but in this arc, I feel like they're a bit more fleshed out, and now that I know their character from their rank arc, I actually do like them a bit more in this setting and this arc, especially with things not being safe. No one is safe, and trust me, they let you know that from the get-go, and man, this is an intense arc. I didn't want to lose anybody out of the captains, and I will say that the suspense and some of the deaths that happened in this arc, man, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Another pro I have is also that these fights were very intense. These fights were pretty great. While some of the Stern Ritters, it was a bit gimmicky, I did like the fights overall, especially with the captains being pushed back. I have not seen the captains get this pushed back since their rank arc, obviously, but this arc right here, their back was to the wall. There was no way they was escaping. They was looking like some peons compared to them Stern Ritters, but obviously they are the good guys, so they kind of overcame some of the situations. But I will say that I did like some of these battles, and some of these captains, they had to get ruthless. They had to get in their bag, and man, when they got in their bag, it created for a good read and a good time. And I know I've already said this, but I love Ichigo in this arc. That is another pro that I have with this arc, because Ichigo, his fierce and powerful aura that he comes into, the responsibility that he takes upon himself, man, and the power-ups, because you already know he's a Shonen Jump character, so you gotta have a little bit of a power-up. Oh, the power-up is so drippy. The power-up is so godly. I love it. I feel like it wasn't fleshed out enough, but I do love it. I also like that this arc expanded upon some of the previous things that were touched upon in previous arcs. I know a lot of stuff, like I said earlier, wasn't too fleshed out in previous arcs, but in this arc, they kind of explain some stuff. Some stuff kind of feels contrived, but it kind of comes full circle after you read all of Bleach. And lastly, Kubo's art is top tier. Some of the double page spreads, oh, Yorichi, oh man, but them double page spreads, some of the action was fierce as well, but those double page spreads, when it had a surprise like from the next page, it is spread all throughout the both pages. Kubo went in his bag in this one. This is the best Kubo's artwork has looked in a while in this arc. And Kubo's art is already the best out of the big three. But in this arc, oh man, he got in his bag. He said, let me show you young whippersnapper something real quick. And he showed me. I'm sorry if I ever doubted you, Kubo. This artwork, this is peak right here. Well, not peak, but it was pretty good. Now it's time for me to talk about my cons, and this is where you guys are going to say that I hated this arc, so let's go ahead and get into it. While this arc was well paced, it felt rushed. Like I said earlier, I feel like the emotional weight that I should have had with some of these scenes really wasn't felt, because there was no feeling of somber or like sorrow that would happen in this arc. There was a little bit, but it wasn't like long enough for me to really let that sink into my emotions. Every time the page was turning, something new was happening, and it was a lot that was happening. If you're on ADHD, you might like this arc, because there's just a lot happening and it's gonna keep your mind all right. I just wish that some of the emotional moments that happen were to actually be a little bit elongated. That way, you know, I can actually let those emotions sink in with me and let me feel the weight of these emotions. I know a lot of these characters are in the middle of a war, but still, it was just moving way too fast. But I'm pretty sure that's how a war is in general. So yeah. Another thing I felt that needed to be corrected was that some things in this arc needed to be fleshed out. Some stuff to me didn't really make that much sense. Some stuff to me, I felt like it needed more room to be fleshed out to make it greater. I feel like if you just told me something plain and right then and there, I'd be like, okay, but I wish this was a bit more fleshed out. I wish I would have saw the history upon this thing. I wish this was a bit more expounded upon. That way it would make more sense in the story. But some stuff is like, okay, we're doing this. You're not going to explain why you're doing this? Okay, well, let's do it. Another con, and also probably one of the saddest things that I have with this arc, is that when this arc ended, it felt abrupt. Like the last volume had like 2 chapters of cooldown after the big event happened. And I felt like the climax, to me, it was just building so high up that when the climax happened, it literally was the end of the arc. I was like, I kind of wish it was a bit more fleshed out. Like I was saying, this is the one time I would say that a 700 chapter series should be longer. This arc definitely should have been longer. Bleach in a whole should have been longer to expound upon some of the things I was touched on previous arcs. But this arc right here, Kubo was just rushing. I could tell that he was probably, you know, given a deadline or something, or he was just probably trying to hurry up and get out of Bleach, because this arc right here, especially when you read the end, now this isn't a bad ending, but I will say this is the most anticlimactic ending I've ever read before, because it literally goes all the way up this roller coaster, but then the roller coaster drops like that. I'm like, what just happened? I felt so lost what happened at the end, because I'm like, I know this did not just happen, and y'all about to give me these 2 cooldown chapters like nothing just happened. It was just so weird when I was reading it. I just had the weirdest vibe. Like, I just felt so incomplete. Another con that I have, and I know you guys are probably thinking right now that I hate this arc, is that some of the characters that were brought back, I feel like they weren't utilized enough, or I feel like they weren't utilized in the most correct way. And I will not touch upon why or who, because like I said, that would be a spoiler, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video. But man, I just felt like the characters that they brought back, some of them, not all of them, some of them, I'm like, this character could have done so much, especially with what you established in this arc and what you've established in previous arcs. This character could have been way more, and my expectation was subverted, but not in a good way, because like I said, the characters could have done way more, but they just didn't, and they kind of fell flat for me when these characters came back. Now, when they first came back, I'm like, okay, they about to do some damage, but towards the end, I was like, they didn't do nothing for me. I feel like I could have took some of these characters that returned out of the story, and that would have been cool. But I will say some of the utilization of some of these characters, it was smart. I will say that. So I'll kind of give you a pro on that, but it's still a bigger con because of some of the characters that were brought back though. So I'll say that. And I know that I said that some of the utilization of these characters was unpredictable, but some of these parts in this arc was very predictable, and I saw them coming from a mile away. The writing in this arc really wasn't the best compared to the Rancor arc, but I will say this arc was better paced than the Rancor arc, but of course you can have better pacing when you're not really trying to flesh out things. So I can appreciate the Rancor arc now, because this arc right here, like I said, it was just speeding through things, while the Rancor arc, it had better writing and it had better character development overall. But this arc right here, man, I don't know. And the last con that I have for the Soul Society arc was that this arc solidified to me that Bleach is probably the most repetitive out of all the Shonen Jump series, or at least of the big 3. One Piece is a bit repetitive too, and please do not kill me for saying that, but you can see why One Piece is a bit repetitive. But Bleach is repetitive in the sense of the way that the arcs are built, the way that the character structures are, and what Ichigo has to do in each of these arcs. It's literally the same thing every arc, and the way that Ichigo powers up in every arc is the same way in every arc. And I will touch upon that in the spoiler talk, but I will say that Bleach is probably the most repetitive thing ever, and I'm not one of those guys that get angry at something being repetitive, but when the whole series, each arc has something repetitive in each arc, I'm like, yo, this is the same thing each arc, just in different circumstances. And I hate to say that, because I really did enjoy Bleach, but it's very formulaic. I will say that it sticks to one formula, and it uses that formula for each arc. But that is about it for my 1000 Year Blood War arc. Overall, I enjoyed it. I liked it more than a Rancor arc. Where the Rancor arc was lacking, the 1000 Year Blood War arc was picking up, but where the 1000 Year Blood War arc was lacking, that's where the Rancor arc was a bit better. The Rancor arc has a bit better writing, but I will say the 1000 Year Blood War arc had better pacing and better action overall. And I felt the emotions for some of the characters, even though this was rushed to heck, because that ending, still the ending, I'm like, it just really went up here, then it just fell flat. That's about it. Overall, I did enjoy my time with Bleach, and I really gotta say that I cannot wait to see some of these fights animated, because I will be there probably in the Twitch stream watching some of these fights and just awing at some of the awesomeness. But you guys let me know what you thought about the 1000-year-blow arc. Now it's time to get into spoilers. Yes sir, spoilers. I've been waiting to talk about the spoilers for a while. Some stuff I just gotta let loose, I gotta let out my mouth. So if you are still here and you heard me say that I'm about to get into spoilers, that means that you do not care about spoilers, you already know what happens, or you just want to see me talk about Bleach. I don't know. But either way, we're about to talk about spoilers, so let's go. Now, like I said earlier, some characters are brought back from past arcs and brought into this arc. And some of the Fullbringers, they're brought back in this arc. Some of the Hollows are also brought back in this arc. But the biggest two characters that I want to talk about brought back in this arc has to be Aizen and Grimmjow, and they're probably the most disappointing part of this arc. Now, I already knew that Aizen had to come back somehow, because this version of Aizen is actually the version that's in Jump Force, which I wish it wasn't, because this is the most anticlimactic version of Aizen, most powerful version of Aizen, obviously, but this is the most anticlimactic version of Aizen. The cooler version of Aizen to me was in their rank arc, but this version of Aizen, he's literally sitting in the chair the whole time until they have their fight with Yawich. And Aizen, he's a bad dude. He is a bad dude, trust me, because this man is way more powerful than he was in their rank arc, and his power is being held back. That was insane when I was reading that. I'm like, Aizen's still a bad dude, even when it's not his arc. This is insane. And then we have Grimmjow come back, which I was sadly spoiled on this fact by someone in my Discord, because they thought I didn't come in my Discord often. But Grimmjow comes back, and I just feel like his inclusion really wasn't needed. I feel like I could have really took Grimmjow out the story, and it would have still went the same way. Now, Aizen, I need to keep Aizen in the story, but the way Grimmjow was in the story, I just feel like I could have took him out, and he could have easily been replaced by somebody else. You get what I'm saying? Like, we could have wrote this a better way. But I did like the inclusion of some of the Fullbringers. They bring back everybody that was an enemy at some point, except for obviously the Quincy's, because that's what they're fighting. But some of the Quincy's do actually turn to good guys, or anti-heroes, kind of. But yeah, with Aizen, I honestly thought that he was going to be some guy that was going to overpower Yawich, and Ichigo would have to fight Aizen. But then it doesn't happen. Like, Aizen does something super heroic and sacrifices himself, which I didn't see coming. But I just felt like it was very contrived the way that he sacrificed himself. I would just say that I wish Aizen would have done what I was expecting and become like a super duper bad guy compared to Yawich, and Ichigo would have to fight them. Which, let's actually talk about Ichigo and his new transformation. That new transformation is sexy, especially when he finds the way to actually fuse his Quincy powers, which, yes, he has Quincy powers. Like in every single arc of Bleach, whatever the enemy has, Ichigo somehow gets it. In the first arc, he's a Soul Reaper, which obviously I understand that. He gets his Soul Reaper powers, and the enemies are Soul Reapers. In the second arc, he has Hollow powers, which I understand. He had the little Hollow guy inside of him when he was fighting to get the king and the horse and all that type of stuff. But now in this arc, he's also a Quincy. Each arc that we go into, Ichigo gets that power. Ichigo has 4 different powers. And let me not even bring up the Fullbringer arc, where he gets that Fullbring ability, which obviously I wanted to touch on. In retrospect, the Fullbringer arc really didn't serve much of a purpose overall. Yes, it got Ichigo back on his feet, but in retrospect of everything, the Fullbringer arc, I could have literally took that out, give Ichigo his powers some way, some other how. And I just feel like I could have rewrote the whole Fullbringer arc, because I feel like I was going to bring the Fullbringer power up into the arc. But my knowledge of the Fullbring power and them not bringing it in there, I feel like that Fullbring power was an actual waste in itself. It was a cool power that Ichigo got at some point, but it was a waste overall. Unless you want to count the Fullbringers actually coming to help Ichigo, then it's not that big of a waste. But overall, its weight and everything is a bigger waste. Like, Juego Mundo had a bigger effect on this arc than the Fullbringer arc. But even though the Fullbringer arc is like, what, 50 chapters? But still, I feel like the Fullbringer arc, overall in retrospect, wasn't that weighty in the totality of things. I will say that. I just felt like it was wasted. And I really did like the Fullbringer arc. But now we're looking back at it in retrospect, it's Now, while we're still in the spoiler talk, let's talk about when Iryu obviously betrayed the Soul Society and Ichigo and his friends to side with the Quincy's. And I already knew from the get-go that Iryu is not a bad dude. Iryu does not have a bad bone in his body. He was obviously going to betray Yawich from the get-go. His friends thought he betrayed him. But I'm looking at this like, What Iryu got planned? Like, what is Iryu doing to betray him? Because he's supposed to be the successor to Yawich, and Yawich obviously enlists him within the Stern Ritters. I believe he has a letter B, I think, for balance or something like that. Or it might be the other guy that he fights towards the end that also wants to get back at Yawich. But you guys know who I'm talking about if you're in the spoiler talk, you read all of Bleach. But I don't know. I was just like, I know that Iryu's gonna try and do something sneaky and it's gonna fail somehow. And Iryu comes at the end to, you know, hit the clutch save, but I was like, I saw this coming from a mile away. Like, I really didn't feel like the characters in the final fight with Ichigo, Aizen, and Renji fighting Yawich, I didn't really feel like that was in much danger, because I remember when Iryu got that weapon from his dad and he's running and they try to make it seem like the character's about to die until Iryu comes and shoots that arrow or whatever. I'm like, I already knew that was coming and I already knew that would defeat Yawich. But I did like the way that they used Aizen to trick Yawich. That was fire. That was fire. But still, Iryu's betrayal and him actually doing it to help save his friends was very predictable. I saw that thing coming a mile away. Once I knew that the Quincy's were actually going to be at war with the Soul Reapers, I knew that Iryu was going to be siding with the Quincy's, but he was going to be betraying them this whole time. And I know I already talked a bit about it, but like I said, this arc is very formulaic with all the other arcs in Bleach. Like I said, each arc, whatever arc Ichigo is in, he gets the power that comes from that actual arc itself. So I was like, okay. And you know, obviously Ichigo gets beat in the middle of these arcs. He has his training. It's never like the training before the arc. The training is always during the arc when all the ish is going down and everybody really needs him. But I will say that this arc, like I said, I did like Ichigo the most in this arc, and obviously Ichigo always gets his training from higher beings or being stronger than him. Even though we get introduced by the higher versions of the Soul Society captors, I forgot their names right now, but you got that dude that paints and like controls the power of black. His fight with Yawich, that fight was fire. Like when he was saying, I'm taking away your name, therefore I'm taking away your power. That fight was fire. I forgot his name, but overall, I just felt like the inclusion of them was kind of useless unless it was to train Ichigo. But besides that, they all get washed by Yawich, and Ichigo is like the strongest person now in the Soul Society, aside from Aizen. Aizen is super powerful as well. How is he not a god candidate besides him being evil? But still, Ichigo is just like super powerful, and Ichigo somehow gets this super huge power boost, and he gets a transformation each arc, or he gets some superpower ability each arc. And I gotta say, this arc right here, the one that he gets in this arc, oh, I love it. And also, from my Bleach box set video, don't act like when I was opening that first volume of the 1,000-Year Blood War Arc and I was showing you, and I was like, why does this guy look like Zangetsu from Ichigo's sword? Ah, come on, you got it. I knew y'all would look like Zangetsu. I knew it. So I knew that I had to play a role somehow. I say he looked a bit like Goldie Roger, but I knew Zangetsu looked like goddamn Yawich. I knew it. I knew it. I knew I had to play a role or something. I knew it. Oh, Kubo with the foreshadowing. I like it. I like it. I thought I was tripping when I first opened that box set, but I like it. But that's about it for the spoiler talk. Those are some of the things I wanted to talk about for this Bleach arc. Overall, like I said, with Bleach, it's formulaic. It's very formulaic. But I will say that I did enjoy my time with Bleach, except for their rank arc. Their rank arc, but I did like the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. It messed with my Shonen Jump stand inside me, in my heart. Oh, it was beating every single chapter. I loved it. Oh, it was so good. This arc, I can see why it's going to be divisive among some of the anime community, but I will say I hope a lot of you guys that do watch it or read this arc really enjoy it. Like I said, thank you guys for watching. If you are new to the channel, you haven't already, go ahead, like the video and subscribe and hit the post notification bell. And you know, I got to give a huge shout out to my Patreon pledgers for going ahead and financially supporting the channel. Guys, I highly appreciate what you guys are doing for me, financially donating on Patreon. And I got to give a huge shout out to the YouTube members for also financially donating on the YouTube side of things as well. And a huge shout out to Broke Boy Gang if they are still here, because I know a lot of people, it's hard for them to get a hold of all the Bleach manga right now. But trust me, once you do get it, it'll be worth it. Like I say, thank you guys for watching. Dark Sage out. Peace.